Hi, Mark.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Nice to meet you.
You too. You too.
Really excited to be here at the first Frontend .NET Frontend Day 2021. Visiting everybody, probably in their homes. That's really nice. Everybody letting me in.
Yeah, we have some people just waking up. We have some people actually watching in bed because of the time differences. Yeah, people going back from work. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah. Time zones can be interesting, especially as developers.
Yeah.
we realized that when we created the schedule for the website.
Yeah.
We struggled with that a bit, but I think we solved it.
Jeff Fritz had a early morning start, but you didn't notice during the session. That was really great. Really liked it.
Yeah, he had plenty of coffee.
And we did check with him on beforehand, just to make sure.
Yeah, that was a tricky one. Trying to fit in as many sections of the world in one schedule, but I think we made it okay.
Yeah, I think you did that quite well, yes.
So our friend Gerald is apparently super excited about Mark.
Woohoo! Hey, Gerald.
Nice. It's always nice with fan clubs, isn't it?
Yeah. Gerald is very nice, very nice. Always
he is.
Up and looking out for you. Yeah. Thanks, Gerald.
So where are you based?
I'm in Switzerland. So yeah,
Switzerland,
beautiful, nice Switzerland. Yeah, I mean, I would like to say I'm from the Alps. That's what most people know, like nice mountain hills and the cows with the bells and all that. But I'm more from the flatland region. But we get some we got some great wine growing here. So I mean, we got some plus things I think growing for us down here.
Nice. No snow.
Well, we had so much snow actually. But now it's raining, and I guess it will be all gone by tomorrow evening, sadly. But yeah.
You can have ours. We're done.
Yeah.
We're done.
Okay.
I like the snow. I want to ski and listen to Mark's podcasts. I did that yesterday. So that's great.
Cheers. Thank you. Yeah.
I like snow as well, but in December.
But January
I must say,
winter
time is a lot more fun with snow around. I mean, you can do winter sports and you can snowmans and snowball fights and all that. And otherwise, it's just 50 shades of grey with some brown and some green. So yeah.
Oh, that is true. Yeah. Okay, you win.
So for those who haven't heard your podcast, what is it about?
Oh yeah, so the Null Pointers podcast, I actually do that with my good friend Gerald Versluis and Stephen DeVisa, and it's all around mobile. So we all three love mobile development, and we touch on topics around mobile and some opinions and some thoughts of us. And it's usually we try to time about 30 to 40 minutes. So an ideal jogging run time or commute. I know it's such a 2019 thing to say, but who knows one day maybe. Yeah. So if people are into mobile and they like to hear opinions, I mean, be sure to check it out.
Nice. And apparently it works when you're skiing as well, because Daniel already tried that one.
Yeah. We should make a slogan out of that. Works.
Sounds good.
All right, let's hand it off to Mark then.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome again, everybody, to this session on fabulous functional frontends. I know the words functional programming and frontends might not be the things that first come to mind when you hear about it, but hear me out, okay? So when I initially stumbled over functional programming, I was quite excited to do this, and so I dived into this world, and I gave you a good look around, and I saw that there's this thing called F#. And F# is like the functional thing that you can do as a .NET developer. And some of the things that stuck out to me, which I thought are quite nice, are like you don't get any nulls in functional programming. So I thought that's great, because this morning I actually had to fix a null exception in one of my apps. So yeah, I wouldn't have to do that if it would have all been F#. But well, it's the world that we live in, isn't it? Another great thing is immutability. Now, immutability means once you have assigned something, you can no longer change it. Now, that might sound a bit bonkers at first, but what it actually means is you can write code that is easily scalable onto multi-threading and asynchronous programming, all the things that we have to do today. I mean, I just looked at that. I think my iPhone these days has got 8 cores, so I think there's no more way around it to not go async and parallel these days. And functional programming seems to be covered. Another thing that sounded really nice to me is declarative programming. Now, declarative programming, if you're a C# developer, you might use LINQ. And whenever I use LINQ, I always really like the amount of code that I'm not writing. So if you iterate over a list, there's no for loop and no int e equals 0 and all this stuff, and filters are like already built in, and taking a list of people and just getting first and last names into a string. You can do that with very, very few amounts of code using LINQ, and you would have to write quite a bit of code if you would use a more traditional looping approach, and probably also a bit more error prone. So those are all really nice things, and I already said it before, F# based on .NET, so it had me pretty much over on that point. Now I started looking a bit more into it, and it sounded all a bit mathy to me. So there is that aspect of functional programming, like linear algebra or algebra and all that stuff, and you go like, oh my god, I'm a developer, man. And then someone took me aside and said, hey Mark, this is actually no problem, because F# is really great when it comes to boring line of business application blobs. So it's just an overall great general purpose .NET language that you can use. And it's actually even got fewer keywords than C#, so it might even be easier. And since it's running on .NET and .NET Core, you can actually use it everywhere. So I thought, that sounds interesting. So I could actually use this on Xamarin.Forms, couldn't I? Just like use it there. And that sounded really interesting. And I looked into it, and you can actually do that, because it turns out that F# can do OO, but it is a functional first language. So what does that mean? If you look at it from a C# point, C# is an OO language, an object-oriented language, but you can write functional code or functional-esque code using C#. It's just not the most idiomatic way. Though a lot more features are being added right now to C# to make that easier and easier as we progress. Now, that being said, I could do that with Xamarin.Forms just using F#, doing nothing else. But it turns out that the initial creator of F#, Don Stein, was tasked by Miguel de Casa, who used to lead the Xamarin efforts. And he said, hey, why don't you create a functional front end that is based on Xamarin? And that is when Fabulous came to be. So Fabulous is a MVU framework for F# working with or on top of Xamarin.Forms. Now, MVU stands for Model View Update, and you might be like, okay, what is Model View Update? And I always like to think of it, it's just the functional MV* pattern for your UI framework. So we got the MVCs, we got the MVVMs, we got the Model View Presenters. So there are a bunch of those, and MVU just is that for functional. Now, oftentimes, when we think about this MV* pattern in a .NET front-end way, we think about MVVM. And this is the basic drawing of MVVM. We have the view model, where all the state is for a view. We got data binding going on between the view and the view model. And you can see there's a lot of back and forth. And then we also got our models, our business logic. And we have all these arrows going back and forth. And that can be a source of problems within your app, because it turns out that when you have these bidirectional channels, the user might be able to bring your app into a state where it will just explode. And then you're into stack traces, and that can be a bit of a pain. When we look at Model View Update, we have a clear circle going on. So we have the state represented in the model, which tells the view how it should render itself based on that. And then when we make a change on the view, like clicking a button, we send a message to the update part, which will update the state of our app, which is the model. And then the game continues round and round and round and round. Okay, so let's look at this in a fabulous way, or fabulous functional front-end way. So the app that you get when you just make a .NET new fabulous thing is actually this counter app. And this counter app, what you can do is you can increment a number, you can decrement it, you can put on a timer, which will do that automatically, the incrementation. You can set the step size. And what you can also do is you can reset the state of the app back to its original state. And notice the button is grayed out once you have reset it. So you can do all these functionalities. If you're a Xamarin.Forms developer, you might already know all of these things. Now, let's dive into the code. So this is the code powering this app. And if we look at it, we see we have our platform projects. If you're a Xamarin developer, you know these. So we got it for iOS and Android. Now, if you're a Windows developer, you might be wondering, hey, where's my UWP? You could do it. I just will be demoing a lot of this on a Mac, so I didn't do it. But you cannot have a UWP platform project. So that will be C#. That's also the reason why in the Fabulous project, you actually will find some C# code. That's for powering these kind of scenarios. But that aside, we can put it on these platforms, and we can see up here, we have our .NET Standard project, which is usually used so we can go cross-platform. Now, this looks a bit different because we only have got one file in here, and that one file has the entire app in here. So in here, we have our view, we have our logic, we have our startup code. It's all baked in here, and you can see it. The screenshot tops out at about 62 lines, so let's give it like maybe 70, 80 lines of code, just to be on the safe side, and that's the entire app which we're writing here. Now, let's look at the MVU parts which are present in this app. So let's start out with the model. We have it up here. So we need 3 pieces so we can keep the state of our app. We have the count, which tells us how many times we've incremented or decremented, so it keeps that state. We have the step that was with the slider, we could adjust it. And we have the state if the timer is on, so if we're automatically incrementing the number. Now, this model will be passed on into the view function. And in the view function, what we are doing is we are rendering the view. Well, actually, not really. What we are doing is we are telling in this function how we would like the view to be presented based on the state that the app currently has. And we pass in 2 arguments into this method. So we have the model, which I just shown you before, and we have the dispatch method. The dispatch is a method that we pass in, which we then can send messages with. So if we push a button, we would then use the dispatch method to send that message to the update function, which is up here, which will then be invoked with the message and the state. And in here, we will then change the state of our app. Now, the messages, they're up here. And you can see this is some kind, this is a union type. This is a bit of an enum, but it can do a bit more because you can actually assign values to the different states. So this is something really cool that you have in functional programming. And in here, we just can see all the state changes are defined in this message. So if the state is not defined in this message, we cannot change it. So it's a bit, if we would add a new feature, we would have to add some kind of new message to then represent that state change. And this is how MVU works in a nutshell for small app. Now, what I really like about this counter app is it's quite simple, but you can see a lot of stuff that is happening. So you can see how the app is driven from the model and how the state is in there and how you populate the view. Now, you might think, okay, so you draw the view the entire time. Wow, that sounds like super inefficient. Now, what you actually do is you say, this is the template, how the view should be rendered. And then the Fabulous framework will diff that to the real view that is at the front, and it will just apply the changes needed. So it might look a bit that way, but it's not how it is performs in the background. Another thing that you saw is the state changes, they're all defined, and you get them all in this counter app. So you can see how you can make asynchronous calls, how you can make background calls using the timer function, all those things. So I think this app is a really great starting point and also a great point of reference when you get started using Fabulous. And another thing that I really like about this MVU thing is that we have one place to change. So all the state changes happen in that update method. And the update method always gets called sequentially. So there's the Fabulous framework prevents that there are multiple calls happening at the same time within that update method. Another great thing, maybe one of my favorites, it actually uses Xamarin.Forms. So that means all the goodness that we get with Xamarin.Forms, all the view controls, all the supported platforms, you actually also get them for Fabulous. And that's, I think, in my opinion, something really great. Now, I showed you an app, and maybe you're going like now, fascinating, Mark, really fascinating, but I can't sell this to my boss. It has to look a bit more pretty. So let's do this with a bit more style. Okay, so doing it with style, one option that we have, since we're on Xamarin.Forms, we could use CSS. Now, truth be told, if I can change a color in CSS, I'm quite proud of myself. So I'll be not showing you a lot of CSS, but you have that option because it's in Xamarin.Forms. Another way how we can do this, is using Coda UI or XAML. And whenever I sit down and have a discussion with other developers about using Coda UI and XAML, it starts to end up something like this. Okay, now I'm Swiss, so I don't have an opinion on this. And I actually like both approaches here. So when I'm developing in C# and Xamarin.Forms, I usually tend to use XAML because I know how it works. If I use Fabulous, I usually tend to use Coda UI. It just feels a bit more natural. So stay with me on this one. And just note, you could, in theory, do it with XAML in Fabulous the same, even if I will be showing you in this demo only the Coda UI approach. So let's head over to here. Now, I'll be showing you here a short demo of an app, and I'll be starting it here. I'm compiling it in Visual Studio. You could do the same demo using Visual Studio and Windows, so there's nothing that will be annoying us here. I'm always getting this one here lately. I don't know how to do it forever. I might have to once read through the whole error message. But anyway, so this is it. This was the beautiful UI I've promised you. Now, I know this will not win any prizes, but this is the starting point. So let's make this now a bit more pretty. Now, one way how I could do this is I could stop the debugger, make a change, build it again, and let it run, and then we would see the change. Now, that is a bit boring and a bit inefficient. So I'll do this a different way. What I will do is here I'm in the .NET Standard root directory, and I can just enter in .NET Fabulous watch and send. I have to start this in the background, but what this does, it will now watch for changes that are happening in the file. So if I go into here, and you know what makes every app a bit more pretty? You put in a background image. So let's do this. I don't know why IntelliSense does this every time. So I'll say image from path, and then I will say I would like to have a background image. And I will now save this, and I still have to put a comma here. You see, IntelliSense actually works. So now what it's doing is it's actually now compiling this, sending it via webhook over to my app. And you can see the image is already there. And doesn't that already look a lot prettier? Now, I hope I could demonstrate with you two things. Number one, we got interactive updates, and number two, that I can actually type. Because to keep it in our 30-minute time frame, I'll be copy and pasting now a bunch of code over. So now the first thing that I would like to do is I would like to make our entries a bit more pretty. Now I'll be using functions for this, so this doesn't get too bloated. So what I will do is I'll put a function in here. And since F# is white space sensitive, we have to indent this properly, or else it will not be happy. Okay, so I got this in here. So I got now my make entry. And what I now can do is I can replace my two entry methods that I have down here. So I'll just quickly select these. I'll replace them. So now what I did is I invoke this function, which now draws an entry. This is the standard Xamarin.Forms control. I make it a bit pretty. I look that whenever I change the text, we actually send a message, but I debounce it. So that means I wait 250 milliseconds before sending it. Otherwise, we'd be sending a ton of messages, which might not make a lot of sense. And then I can also say if it's a password, because I don't want to share my password in public. I also can set the text control and some other stuff. So this is all tucked away in this function. And down here, we call it. So we say, hey, this is labeled username. We got the username here. We send here the function that will be invoked whenever the text changes. And then I just simply say here with the Boolean if it's a password field or not. So now I can save this again, which will then again kick off the thing. And what we will see is it made it a bit tighter. So I got now that working for me, but if I now start entering a password text, I now have a password field in here. So that's for the entry. Now, next thing, let's make the login button a bit neater. So again, I'll be copy and pasting this over. Oh dear, don't break the code mark. Oh. So now I forgot to brace here. Okay, so now what we're doing here is we're actually drawing a button. So we got the text, I set some colors, I got the commands which I'm setting. So this will be again something that I'll be invoking. And now what I want to do is I want to replace this login button down here to use that function at the top. And I can just copy and paste this in here. Again, I'll save this so the thing can run in the background. So passing in again the label text, and then we will be calling this here something. It's not. Oh, Forgot to brace again. Okay, so as you now can see, now we got this beautiful, nice button. And since I'm using material design, I did that actually already from the beginning. We get like these beautiful animations. I know some people, they say, Mark, you can't really put material design on iOS, but I think you can. I like it actually. So next step, what do we want to do? We want to have this authenticate button, but we might want to change it a bit. So now let's go over. I'll paste again in the code up here. So, and no, this will not work. So, indentations are getting important. You get used to this white space, I promise. At some point, you will no longer notice it. Now, it doesn't like if I have tabs in here. So now, you see, that's a bit the pain of white space sensitive things. Some people, they get very upset when you do white space indentation. I must say, I rarely notice anymore. And you use a lot less lines to do the same thing. Oh, that was the wrong one, wasn't it? Yeah. You know, preparing code is one thing, but you always have to copy the right things over. Otherwise, it will not really work as you intended it to. So this is at the bottom. Oh dear, what am I doing? Okay, so let's give this a second try. Okay, starts to look good again. So now we have here this create account. Now that's blue. I would like to have it a bit different, wouldn't I? So I'll just say, hey, I want to have here the text color equals color.dark cyan, comma, and I'll save it again. And you can see it adjusts it. So yeah, I like that a lot better. Let's leave it like that for now. Okay, now the last thing is we still have here user feedback. So actually, if I press here login, it actually already sends this login to the update function and the login would be evaluated. But we don't really get any user feedback here. So let's change that. So again, I'll be making a little method here so that we can see this a bit better, although it looks a bit neater. So here we go again. Okay, indent this again. Okay, so now got this. Did I get all the braces? Looks good.
Mark, could you increase the font size a little bit?
Oh, sure.
A little bit tiny.
A little bit tiny, sure. Is this better?
A little bit more, maybe.
A little bit more.
There we go. Thank you.
Cheers. Okay, thanks. So yeah, so now we have pasted in the label text function above, and I'll now be copying in this. Oh God, IntelliSense, get out of my way, please. So I'll now paste in here the error text. So this function will render a label, and we will have a nice red text. So if I now go in here and just enter in a username and press login, it will say, hey, Mark, invalid login. So what I now can do is I can enter in my super secret password, which is the correct one, and I can now press login, and we see we exit again the designer world, and this is how I design with colors. Yes, sue me for it, please don't. Okay, so as you could see, this was the demo, how we can make stuff prettier. And I hope what I could show you with this is that when you develop in Fabulous, you actually get this interactive development experience. So not only do you, not only are you able to design the UI, but since we are changing the code, this means I can change the UI and also the functionality. Now in Xamarin.Forms, what we can do is we got also this live update of the XAML that we're working, and I really love that. When you sit together with the designer, doing these things interactively, they're really nice. But whenever I add a button and I have to then add like a button command handler, I would then have to restart the app. And with Fabulous, you can just go on. And I really think that's a really nice way of developing these things. And I hope I could show you that you can create good-looking UIs. I'm no designer, so I'm sure there's like still a ton of improvement going on there, or that's left, or a potential, as some like to say in the consulting world. But you can actually create good-looking UIs that are way more better looking than the calculator app I showed you before. And another thing that is really nice when you think about using a functional language is actually creating reusable UI components. Now, in F#, since it's not an OO language, you don't actually get that much inheritance, so it's actually a bit frowned upon. But what you can do is you can compose stuff. So you can actually take functions and put them together and create new functions. So it's like functions, it's functional, I know. But what I'm trying to get at is you can take small blocks. Let's say you build small UI pieces, and then you can stick them together and make bigger UI pieces, and then even go bigger, and then create entire templates and maybe even entire pages. And due to the compositability of F#, you actually get language support for these scenarios that work really nicely. But once I started to create these things, like you start off down the UI path and stuff like that, I then started to have a question. And the question was, well, what about Shell? What about visual material? So you saw I already used that one. But what about all my favorite Xamarin features or Xamarin.Forms features? Will I get them? And the thing is, well, yes, actually you get all those Xamarin.Forms features, but you even get more because we're using F#. So what that means is we can use NuGet. And I really like some NuGet in my apps because that means I can add a bunch of well-tested, battle-proven libraries that are out there in the real world doing really helpful tasks for me, and I can include them. So one example that I always like to show when I'm developing with Xamarin apps is the Xamarin Essentials library. You got an app that has to start a phone call. Well, it's right in there. You can put in a dialer and it will start up your phone app. You need to open up a route in the navigation app that you're using on your phone. It's right in there. So you can put in a great amount of functionality using Xamarin Essentials. And the cool thing about Xamarin Essentials is you can use it in .NET Standard. So you get one API for using it across multiple platforms. And the same thing actually goes for different libraries. So if you think about storage, you might want to have a database. So in mobile apps, you usually use a library called SQLite. And that is there, you can use it, and you can then store your data using that as you know and like. Or you want to have a caching API, might that be Monkey Cache or Akavash. You get a lot of these libraries built in, or your favorite JSON library. So it's all in there. Now, I know one sponsor here is Progress. So you might be thinking, well, I got this beautiful Progress chart or this beautiful Progress UI control. Can I use that in Fabulous? And yes, you can. There's the star. I'm no salesman, so I'll just deliver you the truth. So what you have to do that Fabulous will work with frameworks like that is you will have to implement a wrapper so that Fabulous can make that diffing and then apply the changes. And you would have to write a wrapper for that, or you would have to make a little library around that so you could interact with those UI elements. Now, good thing is the Fabulous project actually uses the same technique to use Xamarin.Forms. So you can use Xamarin.Forms with your library, and then you will simply be able to reuse that and generate it, and then you can use those third-party controls. But currently, I think you would have to do that, at least for the Progress controls. You won't get them out of the box. Now, I hope I could show you that Fabulous is actually quite cool. It might be worth trying out. And for me, it was definitely that part which got me started to look more into F#. Because before, when I checked out F#, there were like some console apps, and it's like, okay, but I really like mobile. And there were some other frameworks that I could use. But again, I know a lot of mobile, and this was something that really triggered my inner interest to dive deeper into F#. So you might be thinking, okay, but how do I get started into F#? And I'm just telling you this because I went down this route, and I really hope I can prevent you from some accidents down the road. So I started out, and there's like, I said it at the beginning, it's a bit mathy sometimes, and then you stumble over these terms like, hey, there's a functor or currying and monads. Of course, everything is a monad. And I think monad is just like an endofunctor, blah, 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 blah. And you just go like, oh, totally forking shirt. I don't know if this is really for me. I'm just a simple programmer. I actually want to get home in the evening, and I know maths, but maybe just, and I just can say it's okay. I went down there. You're not too done. I promise you, F# is actually quite easy. And I would just recommend all those things that you said before. They're like design patterns for using functional languages. And I know when I started out with C#, I did not start out and learn, hey, this is the commands pattern and this is how you use it. No, I started out, this is how you assign an int. And now we make a loop. And now we make if else or switch case. I think you know where I'm going. And then maybe later on, they came interfaces and all that. And then later on, I started to look into patterns, how I can build more and more complex apps, but I did not get started there. So again, back to the language, how can you get started with F#? So if you're a C# developer and you got some bucks to spare, I would really recommend this book, Get Programming with F# by Isaac Abraham. Halfway through the book, you will know enough F# to get yourself really into trouble with F#, which I think is always a great spot to be in, because that might then give you enough internal motivation to start looking into some more advanced topics. But for me, it's made for the C# developer wanting to dabble with F#, and it goes step by step, and there's no M-word in there or anything like it. So I'm coming to the end of my talk. So I just wanted to give you a few takeaways with on the way. I hope I could convince you that F# is actually not scary. It's just your friendly, functional .NET language in the neighborhood. I would give it a spin. It doesn't bite most of the times. Model view update is a pattern that simplifies state handling in the UI. So I really like it. There are other apps out there that use model view update, and like in the web front-end world, there's Fable, which is another F# framework, and you can, and it's all over the place in the functional concept, and it really helps bring down the amount of events that can occur concurrently and just mess up with your UI state. Another thing I want to give with you is Fabulous is actually everywhere. Since it's built on Xamarin.Forms, you can run it on Windows, on macOS, on Linux. There's a GTK support, GTK Sharp support there. Yeah, and that pretty much wraps up my talk here. I hope you still have a fabulous day. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Again, my name was Mark Allibone. You can find me on Twitter at Malibone. I work in Switzerland at a company called Ray Technology, mainly in mobile or IoT. I blog about those things on my blog at malibone.com. And we said it in the beginning, I have a podcast with my good friends Gerald and Stephen, where we talk a lot about mobile. We actually haven't done a show on Fabulous. We might do that someday. And I also put you some links here so you can have the Fabulous project and F# for fun and profit. There are some beginner topics and also some more advanced topics, how you can get into F#. And the link right at the bottom, it was a bit too long, so I had to shorten it. That's actually the official Microsoft Docs site when you want to start dabbling with F#. Yeah, and that's been it from me.
Thank you, Mark. Now we have some time for questions. So write your questions in the chat and we will read them, and Mark will try to answer them. But we have some questions already coming in that we can start with. Is the GitHub link the best way to find information about Fabulous? Recommend a book for F#, but where to start read about Fabulous?
Yeah, so on the repository that I linked there is a link to the documentation. So the documentation is also like in the F#. It's a GitHub site, and there are pointers there how you can get Fabulous installed. You can do it all from the command line. It's built on .NET Core, so .NET install and yeah, some Fabulous Xamarin.Forms thingy, and then you got it, and then .NET new Fabulous Xamarin.Forms, give a name, and you're off to the races.
Okay. Do you think Fabulous are for all apps, or do you recommend MVVM or C# for some kind of apps?
Well, you can do all apps in using F# and MVU. There is nothing that hinders you to do that. I think in general, if you look at it, I mean, a lot more is written in C# than in F#. So I mean, you got that for you. And F#, I mean, the Fabulous framework is in version 0.9. I know they're pushing it to get to version 1.0 1.0. So if I'm right now on a client project, as long as it's not 1.0, I'm always a bit, well, should I not? And but yeah, I definitely think you could do production apps, and there are production apps in the app stores using Fabulous for, I think it's a chat messaging app. That's also linked on the website, so there are some references there.
Is there any scenarios that you wouldn't recommend using it?
Well, that's a tough one. I think if if you're under time pressure and you know another framework really well, and you really should deliver, I think you might not want to start learning F# and Fabulous at the same time and then delivering it. Otherwise, I think the same things that apply to general desktop apps written in .NET. I mean, sometimes a web-based approach like with Blazor might just be the better fit because you don't want to have an installer going on. So it's basically like a desktop mobile app. So it's a native app that you're programming with Fabulous. And I think the same measurement standards apply to an app that you write in Fabulous as with your other C#.NET front-end based applications.
That makes sense.
So there are no limitation, but the performance, is it as good or is better compared to MVVM or C#?
So I haven't run any benchmarks, to be honest. I can't give you a millisecond number if it's really any faster, but generally speaking, the performance is good. When I write a Fabulous app, I cannot see the difference compared to the C# equivalent. I'm pretty sure you can make Fabulous quite slow if you give it a hard time with the diffing feature. I mean, as always, you can run into trouble. But I think if you understand how you write those UIs, there are also tips in the documentations where the performance pitfalls might be. I think you're on the safe side using this thing.
Okay. You showed us hot reload feature or watch and send or what you called it. Can you use it for all code, not just the UI, when you're doing changes in your business logic, for example?
Yeah, you can use it. I mean, as long as you're in this .NET standard, you can use it there.
Okay. So that's.
Sorry.
Let's continue. I'm sorry. This is a problem when talking online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go on.
Okay. Yeah, no. So generally speaking, so as long as you make changes in the .NET standard part, you will be okay. Now, I showed you adding a background image. Now, that was in the platform project. I didn't show you during the demo, but if I would have added that during the demo, I would have had to restart or recompile the app. So it only takes those changes. Another limitation that I've seen is once you've got multiple screens, it will lose the state. So your model will always get freshly initialized on every save. Usually you can get around by that because you initialize the model at the top of the app, and you could then just say initialize model to be there or to have these messages sent before it starts running. So you can get around it to debug, but there are some, let's say there's some one or two maybe rougher edges around that one that are not yet currently solved, but otherwise there are no limitations. As when you look, I think maybe your question comes from a Xamarin perspective where you can make XAML changes, but as soon as you start going to the view model and you want to add that command handler there, that just doesn't work without restarting it. And you can do that with Fabulous.
Yeah, that sounds great. It sounds like you can be really productive with that feature. But what about hot restart? Is there any difference there? I know it's maybe not a UI framework thing, so I guess you can use it with Fabulous if you're running on Visual Studio on Windows.
I have to try that, to be honest. I didn't try that yet. I will have to get back to that with you, Daniel. I know that you can develop the iOS route, but now that you mention it, I never tried it with hot restart. So I never tried plugging in my iPhone with only my Surface Book and not having the Mac nearby. So I'll give that a spin. I'll let you know, Daniel.
Thank you. It would be interesting to hear. Have you compared with other MVU frameworks? You said you start using F# because you like Fabulous, if I understood you right. We have other C# MVU frameworks like Comets, and have you tried them also?
Actually, I haven't yet had the chance to really seriously look at Comet. I know it's out there. So Comet is a C# language that also is using the MVU pattern for doing it. I've once tried Elm. So Elm is like the originator of this MVU pattern, and it's its own language, and it cross-compiles into JavaScript. And they're huge. I mean, some people are huge fans of Elm that are using it. And I have once done a tiny app in Elm. But I know that there is Fable out there for F#, which also uses MVU. I think it's actually based on React.js. And there are other approaches out there that use this Elmish or MVU approach, as it's called.
Okay. We have David here, says that Fable is now on his list to learn after your session.
Cool.
That's
Cool.
nice.
Have fun.
Also, points for the cats in your talk. That's always appreciated.
Yeah, well, I once went off on a run, and I have cats in every presentation. And then I once did a presentation without a cat, and then someone came up to me and said, "Look, nice presentation, everything, but where was the cat? I was here for the cat." So it's a must.
How could you?
I just waiting for my cats to join the stream. They used to do that during conferences, but not yet.
I had online class the other day, and one of our cat guests, temporary cat guests, they joined the class as well.
Oh, we can have a cat.
Oh, we can
join?
have a cat. We can have the
no,
vibing
it's
cat.
only on the other one.
No.
Oh.
Only on starting soon.
Yeah, bad prep.
Yeah.
We need to have a cat.
2022, and there will be cats.
Yeah, definitely. So we need a cat mascot.
I've heard that we are actually hosting cats later this week.
Yeah. They arrive tomorrow.
Ooh.
But I have your stickers here, coding off your stickers with your cat.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So are you from Switzerland, or are you from?
Yes. No, I got two passports, one Swiss and one that used to be an EU citizen passport, and now I'm. It has got its upsides to speak two languages fluently.
Yeah.
Don't mention the EU issue.
It's too soon. I know it's too soon.
Back to cats.
Back to cats.
Yeah. What can you do? It is what it is.
Yeah.
Also, cats are great, so it's a good backup.
So what is your favorite feature when it comes to F#? Why did you love it that much so you switched to F#?
Well, I think it was like the promises, like that you can make certain complex scenarios more easy. And there is this thing, I think I mentioned in the talk, that we tend to get more and more calls in our machines, and a lot starts to be more parallel or asynchronous. And using these functional ways of developing applications, I mean, you can also do it in C#. There's nothing really hindering you. It might just be a bit harder to do certain things. Those really got me into that, and I've been applying quite a few of these concepts now into my apps, and in certain scenarios, I'm now one of those people. I've done enough F# that I'm like, if only I could use F# here. This would be so much easier. So yeah, that's when you know, like, oh dear, I'm now over the point.
That's nice.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's really move on. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think he's talking about the EU passport.
Yeah, I think so,
Yeah, not the F#. Hopefully, he's not talking about F#.
Hopefully, yes. Otherwise, there might be a deeper discussion there about F#.
Yeah, let's take that on Twitter, shall we?
Yeah, sounds like a plan.